we're going to have another review session, questions and answers about the teachings on refuge. And let's begin. Excuse my voice, it's a little bit, the cold season has come, I think. And let's begin with a little meditation, as we did yesterday. Try to set some motivation. So sit comfortably with your spine erect and place your attention on your breathing. Let go of all other thoughts. Although it's difficult to control completely what appears to your mind, you can choose to ignore what appears or to get involved with it. So in this case, let go of what's appearing to your mind. When your mind wanders to the senses, let go of that. Make note of it, let go of it, and place your attention back on the breathing. And think, this breathing, respiration, is all that divides me from my next life. If I were to breathe out, as at the time of death, without inhaling, within a short time, I would be dead. Within a short time, I would be experiencing the next life. The only thing that stands between this life of leisure and endowment that we have, leisure to practice the Dharma, the endowments or richness to practice it extensively, perfectly. The only thing that stands between this life and death is just something as insubstantial as a breath. We're going to have to leave this incredibly useful life that, as we look at it over the extent of our life in retrospect, perhaps we spent much of our time in very trivial, meaningless concerns, mainly about our own pleasure, reputation, well-being. We didn't have the karma, perhaps, to meet the Dharma at a very young age, and even when we did meet it, many doubts were in our mind, still there, to practice it. How much of this opportunity that we have now will actually be taken care of, made use of? We definitely have to leave this life. We definitely have to die. All the great beings of the past have passed away, have died. Our parents, sometimes our siblings, even people younger than us have died. We don't know when. The time of death in this southern continent is uncertain in general. There's no set lifespan. And in this degenerate age, it's even more chaotic. Different causes of death becoming very powerful. Even the things that we use to elongate our life, we think, the medicines that we take to supposedly make our life better, or perhaps in a sense we might think longer, can become causes of death. And at the time of death, the only thing that helps us is the Dharma, the mind of refuge that we can generate at that time, or that we've generated during our life. It's a practice of Dharma. Our body can't help at that time. It can't keep away death if we tense our muscles or put ourselves in a particular position that can't protect us, nor can our friends, influential as they might be, or our wealth. We can't. Although we can pay for very good medical, service, medical application, we can't buy extra time. We can't use our influence. And after this life, what is between us and the next life, just this mere breath when it finishes, probably, if we think about it, if we weigh our activities, if we're not able to continue practicing Dharma, if we don't take refuge, if we don't have any kind of protection, what awaits us very likely is a lower rebirth in the hells, as an animal, as a hungry ghost, a preta, where there's no leisure to practice the Dharma. Whatever imprints we've left in our mind will be eroded away, spiritual imprints. Even if we were to be born as a deva, as a god, although we might experience a lot of pleasure, it would be very little leisure to practice the Dharma because of the fulfilling of our wishes almost instantaneously for a long period of time, using up our store of virtuous karma. What can protect us from this? Not our own intellect, our body, our reputation, and so forth. The only refuge that we can really seek, that others have sought and succeeded in utilizing, is the Dharma, the Buddha who taught it, and the Sangha who practice it, the triple gem. All living beings who've been our mothers are in exactly the same situation. for their sake, not just to be free of lower rebirth, not just to free ourselves from the onslaught of cyclic existence, but for the sake of attaining a state of omniscience in order to benefit all living beings, to have a great heart, open heart, to spontaneously and effortlessly work for their benefit, I have to take refuge. To do that, I have to understand about it. There's no way that these ideas appear in our mind without some cause. So for that purpose, I'm going to participate in the class again this morning, preparing ourselves for the lecture later this afternoon. Again, reviewing and contemplating the details of refuge for that purpose of attaining enlightenment for the sake of all sentient beings. And relax. Bring your attention back. Present. Venerable, do you have any questions about refuge? Or discussion?
If you could explain in more detail.
Can you speak a little louder? These people have, for some strategic reason, placed themselves way at the back.
Yeah, the Rinpoche was saying that something like that anything good and positive that happens in the world happens because of the activities of the Buddha.
The negativities of the Buddha?
Activities
of the Buddha. Mm-hmm.
Could you explain that in more detail?
So, someone who has attended the Uttara Tantra course, maybe Dorje, can you explain that?
I'm a very poor student, I'm sorry, I can't remember. But maybe if, I'm going to take a stab at it.
Okay, I think for once you should turn the camera on yourself.
I've done that before.
Oh, just see how he's...
I'm going to take a stab at it.
Take a stab at it, okay.
Maybe it has something to do with that the three jewels, activities we do in relation to the three jewels creates merit for us, and so then that merit manifests as positive phenomenon or positive karma ripening. I'm not sure actually. Something like that.
Sounds good. What do you think? Anyone? Don, what do you think?
Hear the question very clearly.
So, I'll paraphrase it. You correct me, Venerable, if I don't get it exactly right. Venerable was asking in the teachings yesterday, I believe, right, or the day before, in the Memorial Shrine, that every positive thing that we experience, whether it be pleasure or realization or whatever, occurs due to activities, due to the activities of the Buddha. So Dorje was saying, he was taking it from the other tack that because we take refuge, or we've created virtue with respect to the Buddha, Dharma, and Sangha, is that what you were saying, Dorje? That we experience good things. He's not sure what he said, okay?
Well, I would say something similarly, that because the Buddha teaches us about cause and effect, karma, the good results of virtue, that we practice virtue and therefore have some good results. So ultimately all things come from the Dharma in that way.
Yeah, I guess, yeah. Like when we say this, no, I'm just, no, that's good. No, that's good. That's exactly right. Both of you. I'm just thinking, the prayer that we often say when we offer our food or when we take refuge. There's a famous prayer that we find in the Tantras. Lama Sangye Lama Chu Dejin Lama Gendunte Kungi Jepo Lama Te Lama Namla Chobabu, you can say at the end, or Kyapsuchi. Do you know, how would you translate that, Ramo? Do You know the verse? Lama Sangye, Lama Cho, Dejin Lama Gune. The guru is, yeah.
Sangha also.
Yeah.
To all gurus, I take refuge.
Well, yeah, the Kungi Jepo, the creator of all. Jepo means creator, and Kun means all. So the creator of all, say Lama Sangye, Lama Shu, Dejin Lama Gendunte. So the guru is Buddha, the guru is Dharma, the guru is, likewise, in the same way, Sangha. The guru is the creator of all. To all gurus I make offering. So in that sense, we would say, how is the guru the creator? You know, it doesn't mean creator in the sense of the creator God of the peoples of the book of the Bible. You know, as someone who has created from his own or her own side the world and our souls. But the creator of all good, although the word doesn't come in there, in the sense that the Buddha's activity, as it was said in the Uttara Tantra, one of the reasons to prove that all sentient beings had Buddha nature. Do you remember? Did you study that, Venerable? Uttara Tantra? Remember? One of the reasons to prove that all sentient beings have Buddha nature is that the enlightened activity of the Buddha pervades all sentient beings. So it's said that if you trace back, even if we have a virtuous mind via which we create virtuous karma, you can trace that back to the enlightened activity of the Buddha, either at that time or at an earlier time when we were blessed to first generate that thought, or when we were taught how to act in that way and we logically decided that that was a way to act, that also those teachings were brought about by the Buddha's enlightened activity in the minds of others that taught us and so forth. So you can trace everything back to the guru. Like also when we talk about guru devotion, we talk about the kindness in giving teachings and ordination and giving material things. And you might say, well, my guru is a real miser. She's never given me anything. Not even a warm cup of tea, just a hard time. But all of the things that we, in the way that Dorji was saying, also all of the material things that we encounter, all of the goodness that we encounter is due to the blessings of the effect of the enlightened mind, the Guru's omniscient mind, on our mind, causing us to create virtue in the past, as a result of which we accumulated karma, virtuous karma, and that ripens in the attainment of material things. So I think it's in that particular way that that phrase was mentioned. Yeah.
Because unless we had some kind of innate goodness, they couldn't really do much for us, could they?
So what is the innate thing that we have, innate in a certain sense, is what the Buddha called the Buddha nature. Our mind stream has that particular quality of being conventionally, clear and knowing, but ultimately empty of true existence. And it's that nature that allows the Buddha's omniscient mind to be able to affect us. And in the same way, when we were talking about how do you actually take refuge, like say for instance at the time of death, what would it mean to take refuge? Like I remember Lama Yeshe asking someone many years ago, what would you do if we died now, or we were in a car or something? And this lady said, I would take refuge. Lama said, very good. And at that time, I didn't have much of an idea. What does that mean, take refuge? What did you say? I take refuge. I mean, what would it mean to take refuge at the time of death? Anyone know? What would you think, Mark? Mark's dead.
No, Mark's thinking. Mark's not sure.
What would you do to take refuge at that time? He's thinking, I think. Okay, I'll let him think. I've forgotten your name. Melissa, what would you think from the teachings we received and other teachings? What would it mean to take refuge? It said, if you can die with a mind of refuge, you will not be born in the lower realms.
I think a heartfelt view that you're my only protection and your teachings are my only protection, and I'm relying completely on the three jewels through this transition.
I think people that have any kind of religious mind at the time of death, if they have faith in Jesus or Mother Mary or Bodhisattvas or Buddha, there's a similar kind of opening in the mind that allows the Buddha's omniscient mind, the Buddha's blessings, the Buddha's enlightened activity to affect us. Remember, one of the things that was said in the course that through the taking of refuge again and again during life, so that you can take it at the time of death. Like, for instance, if you're, I've mentioned this before, if you're kind of like the mafia, the Catholic mafia guy who thinks, oh, it's okay that I'm cutthroat all during my life because at the last minute I'll just confess. You know, I'll have a good mind at the time of death and I'll go to heaven. But it's not so easy, is it? If you're habituated in negativity and naughtiness, at the last minute to have a virtuous state of mind. It's the same way to have the mind of refuge, which the two components of which are a fear, a intelligent wisdom fear, consideration, apprehension of what's coming in the future, and faith, a major component, that opening of the mind that allows the Buddha's enlightened activity to come in and actually protect you. That particular generation of that mind doesn't come naturally unless you've habituated in it during life. So in many cases, we've talked about this when we talked about visualizing Buddha in the merit field. One of the advantages of visualizing Shakyamuni Buddha, for instance, or if you do your succession yoga or whatever, Vajradhara or whatever, at the time of death, then you can visualize that more easily and that can help you to recall refuge, the mind of faith. Because when you visualize that, let's say, you have taken refuge and you've thought of the qualities of the Buddha's body, which you're visualizing in front, and his speech and his mind and so forth. So I think this is what this section is about. This whole section is about how to take refuge. And one of the major components is faith. And faith is of various varieties. You know, we can have faith which doesn't depend upon a lot of reasoning, but that can arise in our mind because of karma that we've created in the past in conjunction with what we see now. You know, we have faith in someone that might have what we feel to be very special qualities, like seeing the Lama. We could call lucid faith, sometimes called, maybe some people might call it blind faith, because it doesn't seem to depend on a reason. Stronger than that, we can have the faith that's developed through conviction. And Rinpoche was talking about these kinds of faiths yesterday, wasn't he? A faith that's based on some reasonings and so forth, that's stronger. So these are the things that we have to develop now, and in everyday life, to entrust ourselves to the Dharma. You know, when there's a choice of different avenues to take, entrusting yourself to the Dharma would be taking of refuge. And when you don't know what to do, entrusting yourself to the Buddha's inspiration and requesting guidance in that way, rather than just seeking out more and more worldly advice. That doesn't preclude, of course, using worldly medicine and other kinds of activities, but not to take ultimate refuge in other kinds of sources of refuge. Anyway, there's enough of that. Let's see if anyone else has some questions. Do you have a question? Have you been at the teachings? Yeah. Pardon?
I have a question. Rinpoche was mentioning three types of practice of ethics based on fear. One was for renunciation, and I was unclear on it. I hadn't heard it in that. I'm looking for it. So, ethics from fears of this life. So practicing as ethics to be free from the fears of this life. And then the second one was excellent aspiration. And the third one was renunciation, which was vows. So I wasn't so clear on that.
Yeah. Venerable, could you repeat the question?
Lisa, I think, is right, mentioned that Rinpoche had explained that there were three kinds of ethics in this section. In one commentary he was reading or taken from someplace else. Did anyone know which page that was on when we were to? O lay practitioners going for refuge, the three jewels is the basis for the 8 vows. So in other contexts, when we talk about the three kinds of morality, what are the in other contexts, what are the three kinds of morality? Do you know? No, that's not generally what's meant. Usually we talk about the ethics of restraining from negativity, which means taking things like vows, the ethics of accumulating virtuous dharmas, which means, virtuous dharmas means realizations, virtuous karma, in any kinds of things that are beneficial for your spiritual progress. Mainly might mean accumulating virtue and realizations. And the third kind of morality is the morality of benefiting sentient beings. So the first morality has to do with avoiding negativities, kind of with one part of the vows that we take. Even the bodhisattva vows, part of them are avoiding negativities, but part of them are accumulating virtuous dharmas, and part of the bodhisattva vows are benefiting sentient beings. Pratimoksha vows mainly are to prevent creating negativities, preventing one's body and speech. Do we say preventing one's body, speech, and mind, or preventing one's body and speech? Do you know that? Pratimoksha vows? You don't know? Usually the pratimoksha vows just involve the body and speech. There's no vows in the vows of monk or nun or a layperson that explicitly are vowing not to have certain mental behavior, because it's on a grosser level that the mind is too subtle to be able to, with the pratimoksha vows, to be able to protect against them. So I'm wondering if these three kinds of morality that Rinpoche mentioned here might be related to those three types of morality that are generally enumerated, that I just mentioned, the morality of abandoning negativities, accumulating virtuous dharmas, and benefiting sentient beings. One of these was renunciation, one was excellent, what was it? Aspiration. And the morality of protecting from fear. So I don't know, I have not heard of those before. Usually when we talk about the different kinds of generosity, giving, there is an enumeration of 4 types of giving. Giving of one of them is protection from fear. Giving material things, giving the Dharma, giving protection of fear, giving love. So I'm not quite sure where this comes from, and so we'll have to do some analysis of that. I can't. That's the only kind of connection I can make right now, unless someone else. Does anyone else know from some other place? Okay. So as you're if anyone has another question, I'll just mention one or two things about the prayers that we're doing. You know, this first prayer that we say, Tomba Chomdende, Dejin Shekpa Da Chomba Yandaba, Zokbe Sange, Rikpa Dang Shapsu Tempa, Dewa Shekpa, Chikten Kempa, Kebu Dua, Kalo Girwa Lana Meba Ladang, Minamgi, Tomba Sange Chomdende, Pelgawa Shakitubala, Chaksalo Churu, Kapsuchiwa. This prayer is famous, praise is famous both in the Hinayana and the Mahayana. And there is one word, one of the epithets, I think there are 11 epithets of the Buddha here. There's one that's absent in the Hinayana version. But in general, this is very famous. This is, of course, the Tibetan translation of it. But this is known in many different traditions. And then the praise to Shakyamuni Buddha coming afterwards, the first 3 verses, they come from a praise to Shakyamuni Buddha that's recited in Sojong sometime. I think it's attributed to, sometimes it's attributed to Nagarjuna or to one of the reincarnations, emanations of Nagarjuna. And then there are 4 verses praising the, three verses praising the Buddha, Dharma, and Sangha, Gompo Tukche Cheden Pa, and Dakbe Dochak Delwa Gyur, first line, and Drone Drowe Lam Yang Tun. These 3 verses we often find when we offer food, and instead of saying Chaksalo, we say Chobabul at the end. You know those verses, Venerable? So these 3 verses also come from the sutras. And then the verse Dikpa Chiang Mija Shing on page 3 on the top. That verse is also very, very famous. I'm not sure where the origin is, whether it comes from the condensation of the Buddhist teachings, the kind of like the Mahayana, what's it called? Dharmapada. You know the Dharmapada? Do you know that? In the Hinayana tradition. And so there is a similar kind of set of verses in that we have in this from Sanskrit in the Mahayana. May come from that, or it may be from a sutra. But this kind of encapsulates all of the Buddha's teachings. It says, do not commit any non-virtuous action at the beginning. First of all, you have to restrain in practice of Dharma from non-virtue. Then accumulate virtue. Gewa punsum sokbagyo means perfect virtue. It's kind of like the second morality, isn't it? First is like the first morality of not creating negative actions, and then the morality of accumulating virtue, virtuous dharmas, and then rangi semni yongsudru, completely tame one's own mind. So this would involve both realizing emptiness and developing bodhicitta. This is the teaching of the Buddha. Kind of shows a sequence of first, before you can really help others, you have to learn how to avoid negative actions, then create virtue, and then finish the job by realizing emptiness and developing the most wholesome of minds. Does anyone know where the next verse comes from? Karma Rabrip Marmidam. It's from the Vajrakara Sutra, right? This is in the Vajrakara, the Vajracetaka Sutra. Most of it's in prose. There's conversation between whom? Do you know? Who are the people that are talking in the Vajrakara? Subhuti and the Buddha, right? For the most part. And who says this? Does Subhuti say this? Do you know? Buddha says this at one point near the end of the sutra. Most of it's in prose. There's maybe 1 or 2 verses in it, and this is one of the famous ones. And this is kind of the previous verse was talking about about Buddhist teachings, and this is in general talking about what? One side emptiness, also impermanence. like a star, a mirage, a lamp, illusions, drops of dew. It can be interpreted in different levels. Certainly it could be interpreted as in terms of emptiness, but in terms of the wisdom about the nature, as someone said, of the nature of phenomena, they're impermanent and empty nature. And then a verse of dedication. Then we do the Heart Sutra, the Heart of the Perfection of Wisdom Sutra. And do you know what comes after that? Generally, after the Heart Sutra, because it's said that some of the gods of the desire realm, after the Buddha taught the Heart Sutra, when there were hindrances, they recited the Heart Sutra to eliminate those hindrances. So it became tradition at the beginning of teachings to, rather than offer a torma or something else, to recite the Heart Sutra, to meditate, to recite it and meditate on the meaning, and then to, with regard to Tantra, to invoke the peaceful and wrathful aspects of the Prajnaparamita. So the wrathful aspect of Prajnaparamita is the lion-faced dakini. I think there's a little, is that the lion-faced dakini? A little line drawing? Very small, hard to see. Lion-faced dakini. And so this verse that we have here, I prostrate to the gathering of dakinis of the three chakras who abide in the holy yoga of using space, so enjoying space, sort of like kandro, kacho, like one of the epithets of the high dakinis. By your power of clairvoyance and magical emanations, look after practitioners like a mother her child. So the lion-faced dakini is one of these. And when you recite the mantra, usually the lamas, when you say mantra, you pull the beads toward you. So when you recite this mantra, you push the beads away. Maybe you start here, you're pushing them away in auspiciousness of eliminating obstacles. Okay, so you push, this is a little bit different. And then that mantra we recite 21 times. Then there's the mantra of the peaceful Prajnaparamita we recite once. And then in case you've gotten lost in the next verse, there's some words in that verse that are not recited. Did anyone catch? The one that says, Pakpa Konchok Sumgi Kai Demba Chempo Tobki Mitumbe Chok Tamche Chir Dokpa Gyurchik. Have you noticed? Have you tried to recite that? You got lost. Because halfway, a little further, near the end of the first line where it says Mitumbe Chok, the last four words, up until the next two words, Tamche, just leave those out. And the first line where it says Mitumbe Chok, the last four words, and the first two words of the first two syllables of the next line, Tamche. If you leave those out, this is what Rinpoche is saying. Pakpa Konchok Sumgi Kayan Dempe Chempo Topki Chir Tokpe Chir. Stop. Put a line there. And then Dokbar Gyurchik, Mebar Gyurchik, Shiwar Gyurchik. And then after that, then they recite a little more faster. Da Gekbar Tamche. Da Gekbar Che Mitumbe Chok Wignemba Tamche Shantim Kuru Svaha. Shantim Kuru Svaha is Sanskrit again. May it become pacified. So one imagines, you can imagine all of the obstacles that are awaiting you or awaiting the teachings, and imagine with a Vajra chopper, you're eliminating them with this wisdom of emptiness. And then there's a verse about sort of dedicating that. Let's see. By the truth of the existence of the three jewels, Pakpa Konchok Sumgi Kai Demba Chempo Topki Chir. May the inner and outer hindrances and adversities become. I think the outer hindrances and adversities. Mitumbe Chok Tamche. Here it just says. it's hard to see how they translated it, actually. So I would have to look at it to see whether the English, when it says the outer and inner, there's no words outer and inner there. I just wanted to say one more thing about the prayers. I'll check about that for you. On the verse about, on page, about the Dalai Lama, on page, must be 17 and 18, the English translation is a translation of some other verse. It's a verse of supplication to the Dalai Lama, but not this verse of supplication. So there's a lot of mistakes in the translation somehow. No, I mean, you can, that's still okay, but just in case for the future, if one of you wants to translate that. Let's, because getting near the end, let's do a couple minutes of meditation again before we finish. Is that okay, Georgie? Yeah. So calm your mind. See if you can develop within a calm state of mind the mind of refuge, the mind of reliance. Thinking it's the Dharma that I'll be relying on, not my ordinary mind. Completely relying on that, giving up my ordinary attachment that would like to daydream and fantasize about various things or engage in various activities, rather than my anger that would like to activate and eliminate the obstacles or find fault with others. This is what I can really rely on. Developing that mind now, again and again, is what can help at the time of death to develop that, the mind of refuge, the mind of reliance. This is what I have relied on the Dharma, I've collected virtuous merit, I'm now going to rely on that store of merit and this peaceful mind, the Dharma, and also the Buddha's enlightened activity, opening up my heart to that, to receiving the blessings of understanding these teachings now. What can help sometimes for some is to visualize Buddha in front, either as Shakyamuni or as Vajradhara. If you do the succession yoga all the time, you can do like that. Think of that great, blissful, compassionate mind. All of the advice of the Buddha, infallible, beyond the ken of ordinary beings, not taught in other systems, taught out of great compassion, totally reliable. How wonderful it would be if I could pass away and help others pass away with that mind of reliance, that mind of refuge. I think whatever merit I have created this lifetime, this year, this week, today, this meditation that has not yet ripened, may it become the cause of my first step on the Dharma path, developing real refuge, real faith in Buddha, not only at the time of death, in everyday life, again and again, to enhance that more and more as we see it's not just something, not just a ritual one takes once. Due to this merit, may I develop the refuge of the being of lower scope, later middling scope and high scope, even the tantric refuge, and thereby, following the path, achieve enlightenment for the welfare of all sentient beings.